All right, good evening, everyone. Or sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Xavier Duran. I am the Arts, Culture, and Education Programming Librarian for the Lisle Library District. A couple of things before we begin. We are in what's called webinar mode, which means that I am the only one with an active camera and microphone. I apologize for that. I'm the only one with an active camera and a microphone, which means that I won't be able to hear or see you. So if you're in the middle of your lunch break or if you're still in your PJs, do not worry, you do not have an active camera or microphone. Because you don't have an active camera and microphone, I won't be able to hear or see you. So any questions during the program that you may have, please put them in the Q&A section down below. With that said, I'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about online privacy, both on your traditional computer, and a laptop, as well as a mobile device like your smartphone or even a tablet. So just to start things off, have you ever searched for something online and then in a very freaky manner found an ad relating to that in another search that you're doing on another website? I know I have. Have you also shopped online for something specific and then jumped onto Facebook or Instagram and all of a sudden found ads for that specific item on another page? I know I have. And one thing that I did not put on here, and because we're going to go through a lot of dry material, um, I remember once I just got into using a straight razor because I wanted to have a smaller carbon footprint. So being able to purchase recyclable razors was something that I was interested in. And I found a really a legitimate website that was recommended through a men's magazine to search for those items. And once I got to the website, there's a pop-up saying save 10% on et cetera, et cetera. Just type in your email. I did. And then I went shopping on the website and I loaded up my cart with a safety razor as well as some shaving cream. And then, much like my millennial brain, it sort of jumped onto a completely different topic, closed out of the browser, and went to Instagram or Facebook, whatever. A couple of hours later, I received an email saying, "Hey, you forgot something." And it was the website that I typed in my email address into. And in the email address, it showed the two items I had in my cart. It's not a coincidence. You are being tracked by the website that you're using, as well as third-party websites, which I will get into in just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just so that we have more space for the presentation. So what we're going to cover today is it's going to be in two parts. One, we're just going to discuss how you are tracked using two popular methods, cookies and an ad ID. Both of I believe cookies works with both your standard computer, or traditional computer or laptop, as well as your mobile device like a tablet or smartphone. An ad ID um, is very specific to mobile devices like your iPad or a tablet or a smartphone. And then once we cover those two topics, we're going to jump into what you can actually do to lessen the amount of information that is distributed through those websites or through your search engine or through the websites that you use. So I know this looks kind of a little dire, but I just wanted to let you know that what we're going to discuss will hopefully, and I use those qualifiers, hopefully lessen what information is collected from the websites that you use, like Google or Amazon, or just any other website that you frequent, shopping websites, etc. It will not completely stop the collection of information about your web searching habits, because in actuality, whenever privacy advocates like Electronic Frontier Foundation, which I will talk about later in the program, advocates on behalf of consumer privacy, a lot of people who do collect that information will scramble to find new and novel ways to collect that information. So hopefully what we're doing is to make sure that more information isn't being collected. So I just wanted to give you that warning. I also want to talk to you about my background is just in library science. I'm not a computer science major. I'm not a, I believe they call them like digital forensics, people who look to see at crime related to the internet. All of my all of my background is as a librarian, but as a librarian, I also enjoy researching, and I do have the works that the material that I used to put together this presentation at the end of the program, because you always have to cite your sources. So we're going to start with part one, how you are tracked. When you visit a website, say one of my popular one that I've been frequenting is Zappos, because I need new shoes. Whenever you frequent a website, the website will give you a cookie. And a cookie works very much like an ID, or kind of like a passport, that is placed on your computer or device. And what this cookie does is remember the web pages that you visited, so that you can see which pages you visited on the website. It also remembers, especially if you're using kind of like a shopping website like Zappos or Etsy, it will also remember any items that you've clicked on. Sometimes you'll see at the bottom of a shopping page, recently items viewed. And it will also keep track of what items are in your cart. If you're using email like Outlook or Gmail or Hotmail, sometimes when you first sign into an email address on your computer, it will give you the option so that it remembers your login information, so you don't have to type each time you have to go to gmail.com or go on to Outlook. It will remember your information so you don't have to type that in. And there is convenience for that. All of these are quite convenient, because sometimes you're distracted and you forget, and you go to a different website because either you get text from work or from someone saying like, hey, can you look this up? Or hey, can I talk to you? And you're distracted and you move away from the computer, but you can return to that website and see what you've looked at without even having to log in. And these are very convenient, and these are what's considered first-party cookies. And we'll talk about first-party cookies in just a tiny bit. Now, on the same website, there will also be bits of code or tag. Sometimes these are called trackers. They also belong to the family of cookies as well. That creates a profile of who you are by looking at what you're searching for. So this cookie or tag will say, oh, okay, you're looking for shoes. Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know. So this is a third-party tool that's used alongside ads on a website to help generate revenue for their website, which is one way for them to generate some money to help support the infrastructure of their website, etc. It seems very innocuous because, I mean, who doesn't want to make money? These are called third-party cookies. The difference between these two are the first-party cookies tend to be more of convenience, and they will stay on their respective web page. So they won't say that if I was to go to Zappos.com, and then immediately after that, I will go to, say, my Gmail. Zappos won't necessarily provide login information. The Zappos cookie won't provide email information to sign into my Gmail or anything like that. It just stays on the website. However, if the same website, or if a different website that I go to uses the same tools as, say, Zappos.com for their ads or for their trackers, that tracker will follow me to that website. And sometimes, and as I've mentioned in the example before, what will happen is, say that if I'm looking for shoes on Zappos, and then if I was to look up, maybe I'm interested in looking up information on, say, diabetes, and I go into WebMD, and all of a sudden I see ads for Zappos, and I also see ads for the exact same shoes I looked for. That would be considered a third-party cookie. So that's one way of getting tracked on either on your computer or on your mobile device through the use of cookies, specifically first and third-party cookies. Again, very dry, but it's good to know some of the infrastructure on how you're tracked online, or at least one of the myriad of ways that you're tracked online. Now let's head over to your mobile device or your iPad. Give me one quick second. Your device, depending on what you're using, either an Android device or a device that uses iOS, which is the operating system, which is a fancy way of saying the software that runs your iPhone, uses a third-party tracking through something called an ad identifier. And an ad identifier, think of it as sort of your social security number. It's specific because it combines the serial number for the device you're using, plus anything specific to your device, like, oh, you're using AT&T, as well as what model of phone that you're using. So it's sort of very, almost to the point that it's so unique that no other device has the same ad ID as you do. Now, these were first introduced because what tended to happen was a lot of people want kind of free apps on their devices. Will I pay 99 cents for a weather app, or do I want to get a weather app that's free that basically uses the same, not necessarily information, but the same technology to track weather? Of course, I'm going to go on to the free app because I'm cheap. I want to save money. There is a maxim in technology that goes, if the product is free, then the product is you. So to compensate for the free product, for the free ad, and to ensure that there's continuous development for the ad by paying their software coders, designers, anything on the back end of coding, what will end up happening is they will use this ID to say, oh, this iPhone, particularly this person, is super interested in weather. And so what they will do is they will transmit the ID, and then they will sell that ID to a third-party advertiser. Now, say that you have another app and they also collect that information. Say that, since we're on the topic of shoes, I'll say that I use the Zappos ad, or the Zappos app, and Zappos then, the app maker sells that, my identifier ID to another company, and then that same company matches it with, oh, so this person's interested in weather and shoes. And then I go into a third app, say Facebook or Instagram, and they're about to serve an ad to me, because of course nowadays on Instagram and Facebook, it's pretty much nothing but ads. And so they'll use that information to say, hey, this person on this device is really interested on shoes and weather. Let's go ahead and send them a bunch of ads on their Facebook about shoes. And then maybe we can put in an ad that's and some weather specific ads, such as like learn how to storm chase, or marketing materials, etc. This has become such a common practice of apps tracking and using your identifier ID to kind of collect information, that in a 2021 New York Times investigation found that out of the 20 apps that they looked at them, 17 of them indicated that they were collecting information from you to track for the purposes of advertisement. And 14 of those used location information, which, I mean, it's of course, they would use location information because it's a weather app that's specific to you looking into the area or region that you're looking for weather, or looking the weather for. And of course, between all of this, there is overlap between apps. For example, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp are all owned by Meta. They could use the ad identifier on your phone, but since you're browsing Facebook, then jumping onto Instagram, then jumping back onto WhatsApp, they have a plethora of information from you because they're all owned by the same company. And all of these apps are pretty much free. So again, we return to the maximum of if the product is free, the product is you. I want you to kind of think about the amount of information that you gave Facebook, such as your name, your birth date, of course, and sometimes they'll ask for your phone number, they'll ask for your education, they'll ask for um, they'll also ask for your interests. Even when Facebook first started, there was such a buzz about liking pages and sharing. And this was a way to collect information and create a profile of certain people in a certain area. So of course, Facebook can pull up information, say like, this 36-year-old really likes books, shopping for shoes, and weather, based on what I looked at on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And all of those, of course, are owned by Meta. I will add in just a little bit, I will talk about, well, I'll talk about this now. Apple and Android are doing a better job at protecting privacy, even after they've been lambasted by the Wall Street Journal, who did an investigation into this. And I believe there were congressional hearings that talked about the privacy issues that arose because of this identifier ID. The fact that there was information being collected without much regulation to this. As of, I can tell you that with Apple and Android, Apple has released new measures so that it becomes difficult for apps to track you on your smart device. So what ends up happening is when you download a new app with newer versions of iOS, and when you first open the app, it's going to ask for permission to track you for the purposes of advertisement. And you can go ahead and select no, and they won't be able to track your interests on the app, and they won't be able to kind of build a profile from that. This has become so successful that I believe, according to a Wall Street Journal article, Facebook is set to lose about $10 million because of these new privacy features that Apple introduced. Android is also rolling out more comprehensive privacy controls. So there are there's a movement to create better privacy controls from both Android and Apple. But of course, there's always going to be whenever there's an advertiser that's stopped in one area, they come up with new and novel ways to track you. Much like when I mentioned about Instagram and Facebook, because they're all under the same company, that information can be easily shared between all three. Before I head into part 2, are there any questions about the use of cookies and the ad ID, keeping in mind that these are only 2 of the myriad of ways that you can be tracked online, specifically for the purposes of collecting information, for the purpose of being used for advertisement. I'll give it a second. All right, moving on. So now that we've discussed sort of the myriad of ways that you can be tracked online, we're going to discuss some of the practical things that you can do on your devices to ensure that less information is being shared to these third parties. One of them is sort of a change in behavior and your information seeking habits. Um, Google is a big perpetrator or a massive perpetrator of sharing your information online. And again, when the product is free, the product is you. So whenever you use Gmail, all of that, Google, it will track and discover information about you. And so the best way that you can combat that is using a search engine that has privacy at the very center of it. There is a search engine called DuckDuckGo, and you can go to duckduckgo.com. And it's the purpose, this has been a website that has been featured on numerous tech blogs and tech magazines where privacy is the center. The cookies that they do use are first-party cookies. They don't use third-party cookies or third-party advertising, to my knowledge at least, and by the research that I used. What you do is you type in your search engine and type your search into DuckDuckGo, and it won't use the location data unless you specifically tell it to. What it does is it just gives you the information that you're searching for. And so using a privacy-centric search engine that way. Another way that a change in behavior, some websites will also give you the option to accept all cookies or just accept the cookies that are necessary for the website to work. This comes out of, I believe, the European Union and a lot of and websites that are to work internationally. I believe there's a massive I believe the EU has much more stringent privacy controls with regards to what the internet and third parties can collect from you. So cookies, third-party cookies is one way that they could that they can regulate. And so to comply with the stringent European Union privacy regulations, websites will now ask you or even alert you that cookies are being used on this website. And some websites will also ask that whether or not you want to accept all the cookies or just the cookies that will allow the website to be that will function. So when you ever get to these websites, just make sure that you select the cookies, only the necessary cookies. Sometimes they'll just say necessary cookies to make the website work. And that will hopefully deter third-party tracking of you. And keep in mind, when you sign up for things online, you don't have to give all of your oh, sorry about that. It jumped a few steps. You don't have to give your location information online. I think of this when I say when you use Google and you're to look up Starbucks, and sometimes your browser will say, hey, can I use your location information to find your nearest Starbucks? You're more than welcome to use that with the caveat that it might be information that could be used to build your profile, or if you know that, oh, like, no, I'm looking for the Starbucks on like Rainer and 53 and just want to check if they're open at a certain time, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to allow sites to access your location information. I also think of this as, say that if you're on Target, on the Target website, and it's asking you for your location information so it can find the nearest Target, you don't have to give that information. Similar to when you kind of go to checkout and they ask you for your zip code or your email address, you can just casually decline, like, oh no, I am not interested, or just straight up lie and say like, oh, I don't have an email address. Because when stores ask for that, they are building a profile of your behavior and sometimes your purchase history, so that they can so for the purposes of advertising and better tailor items that they can send to you via email. Speaking of email, be careful about giving away your email. I touched on this previously, where you don't have to give your email to the clerk at Michael's, um, or your phone number for rewards points, etc. You don't have to do any of that, because that could potentially be used to build, again, a profile of who you are and your purchasing habits. And lastly, as I mentioned, if you're to sign up for something, I know that with online, if you're to sign up for like a new online store or registering for something online, just fill out only what is required. Sometimes websites will put in red little asterisks next to the fields that are required, and then not have those next to the fields that aren't required. So just fill in necessary information for them to create an account, and then that's about it. They don't need to know um, additional information that isn't required. Now, the drawback to all of this is that when you, um, especially when you use DuckDuckGo, it might take a few seconds longer to find what you're looking for online, um, because we're so used to kind of just jumping onto Google, and Google being able to access our location, or be able to understand the context of our search, because it's built such a profile of who we are through cookies that can guess like, oh, are you looking for these? And then you pretty much get your search results within the first couple of results on the search page. Whereas on DuckDuckGo, you might have to, it'll probably still be on the first page. Maybe it might be on the second page of results. Um, there was something very funny said once, that if you ever if you ever commit a murder and need a place to hide the body, hide it on the second page of of the Google results page. And that's because sometimes Google is so good at what they're doing that you sometimes don't need to go onto the second page results to find what you're looking for. Just a bit of dark humor for this section. So now that we've talked about behavior, we're going to talk about certain settings that you can change on your computer and mobile devices to help reduce the amount of information collected from you. So what you want to go ahead and do is, whatever browser you're using, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, you might want to review the privacy settings on your web browser, especially if it allows you to block advertisers, or allows you to only allow first-party cookies but disable third-party cookies. So your best bet would be to search for, I was about to say Google. You want to search for whatever web browser you're using, plus privacy settings, to get a detailed breakdown of what privacy settings you should be changing on Firefox, on Chrome, on Edge, on Microsoft Edge, on Safari, etc. And most of the popular websites are also listed on some privacy websites that mention that there are robust controls that you can use to that you can control in order to have a safer browsing experience or more private browsing experience. Keep in mind, you need to activate these settings. It doesn't come, as they say, out of the box, ready for you to surf browsing with at least a bit of privacy. It does require that you adjust some settings, and that's why I kind of put in web browser and privacy settings as sort of just fill in the whatever's in the quotation marks so you can find the specific steps for your specific browser. Another thing that you want to do is routinely clean out your cookies. Again, a simple search for your web browser and clear out cookies will give you a step-by-step direction on doing this. When you clear out your cookies, it will also remove first-party cookies that are beneficial to, say, logging into your email address, onto your email account, onto your Amazon account, etc., etc. And I'll get to the drawback of even more into the drawbacks of clearing out your cookies. But let's go to the next one. Make sure that your computer is running the latest software. And by that, I mean your operating system, which Microsoft Windows and Apple iOS. I forgot what, or Apple Mac. I forgot what version of the Mac computer's on right now. The reason why you want to make sure that your computer is running the latest software, and with Microsoft, I should step back a little bit. With Microsoft Windows, you can easily go into the settings, and it should give you the option to update your software. If you go into like either the control panel of Windows by clicking or right-clicking on the Start menu, and then selecting either control panel or settings, and then it should give you the option to update your software on your computer. Similar to that, make sure you have an updated browser. And the reason why you want to make sure that you have updated software is because the companies that maintain Microsoft Windows, as well as Google, Safari, Microsoft Edge, they always release updates that patch vulnerabilities, which are ways for that your privacy could be compromised, or that hackers can get onto your computer through kind of these weak spots in the software known as vulnerabilities. And of course, sometimes the update software, much like how Android will update its software soon, and what Apple has, better controls for privacy. And in terms of what you can do on your computer, say you're looking for something sensitive that you don't want, say, third parties to look at, or maybe it's a shared computer and you don't want people to know that you're searching for, I don't know, something not embarrassing, but say some medical condition, you can use incognito mode. And I put an asterisk here for a very specific reason. Incognito mode allows you to browse the web without saving cookies onto your computer. It's private to that extent. Say you had someone who's very savvy enough that can look at like your IP address, or rather, I'll go back and say the company or internet provider could still possibly see what you're looking at, even if you're in incognito mode. Incognito mode allows the browser to not save any software, any cookies onto the computer, so that the likelihood of being tracked is reduced. Of course, the drawback to clearing out cookies and having very stringent privacy settings is sometimes you're logged out of your accounts, and you would have to re-log in with your email address or whatever accounts that you set as save your password and information. What ends up happening is that you have to use your password over and over again. And sometimes that can be a good thing, because what ends up happening is that it's less likely for you to forget the password that you use. So in case that either your computer breaks down or perish the thought, it's no longer working, you're able to get onto another computer and know your passwords. So what you gain in privacy, you sometimes lose in convenience. But that's a question that you need to ask yourself and kind of tailor your privacy, whatever privacy plan that you want to have for yourself. So there are two questions here that I'm going to go ahead and answer. The first question, is Safari safer than Google? Yes and no. Safari and Google Chrome have been placed on, I should have also mentioned this, as having robust privacy controls. Keep in mind that, of course, Google Chrome is kind of owned by Google. So depending on how you set the settings on your browser, Safari can sometimes be a little more vulnerable than, say, Google Chrome. I will say, actually, now that I think of it, Safari does have way more robust privacy features compared to Google. There's something called fingerprinting, which I haven't covered here because it's a incredibly technical way for companies to track you. Safari has better fingerprinting protection compared to Google Chrome. So Safari compared to Google Chrome might have slightly better privacy controls. But again, you need to actively search for those controls, which you can do by doing a DuckDuckGo search or just doing a search in general for Safari and privacy settings so you know what settings to look for. So it's completely up to your preference and how to set those privacy settings on the browser that you want to use. And another question that I received is, how do you use an incognito mode? Perfect. So incognito mode is, speaking of Google Chrome, is a mode popularized by Google Chrome. Sometimes you can go into, in Mozilla Firefox, it's called private browsing, or in private browsing. In Safari, I believe I forgot what it's called, but incognito mode, or it's a mode that allows for private browsing. And you can find this in your specific browser. For Google Chrome, if you click on the three little dots on the upper right-hand side, or into File and New Browser Window, there's going to be something called New Incognito Window. And you click that, and it should bring you into incognito mode. Similar to Firefox, sometimes it's usually on the first menu. You would go into either File or Settings. It's usually on the very first, on the front of the program. Sometimes under Settings, under Window, it will give you the option to go into incognito mode or private browsing. And this will allow you to browse so that cookies aren't saved onto your computer. So it does the job of dotting cookies onto your computer. So great questions. Now here's something a bit more technical, way more technical. On your mobile device, you can disable your advertising ID on your Android phone, and you can also disable tracking on your iOS iPhone. And these are newer features. iOS, I believe this might be in, I forgot what version of it is, but it's in the newer version of the iOS or Apple program. And if you ever need to update your phone with iPhone, it's a little easier. All you have to do is go into Settings, General, and Update. And if you tap that, it will check to see if there are any updates for your phone. Older devices tend not to get the newer updates because of for a myriad of reasons I won't get into. Sometimes there's limitations of hardware or etc. But you would check, you go into Settings and General and Update, to check to see if there are any updates for your iPhone. With Android, you can go into settings, and I believe if you scroll down to like system information, and it should give you the option to update. Android gets a little tricky when it comes to updates because sometimes it's very carrier specific. And by that, I mean sometimes if you try to install a version of Android onto a phone that's from Verizon, and it sometimes what it will do is it will make the phone no longer work. Sometimes you have to wait for a text message from the company that says like, hey, you can download the newest version of Android, and then they'll give you the steps on how you can download it onto your computer not through your computer, through your phone, through some steps rather than a direct link. So there's less of a possibility of um, bad actors trying to put in malware onto your Android phone. So with going back to disable tracking, as you see, very easy step-by-steps that you can use to disable tracking on your devices. If you're trying to kind of frantically write this down, I'll go ahead and send this email to. I'll have this email or I'll have this PowerPoint available on the website for the or on the calendar next to the Zoom information. I will also go ahead and email it to those who registered for this program as well. This is also being recorded, so you can always come back to this if you'd like. Of course, the drawback to disabling ad tracking is there's less targeted ads, so which is a great thing, and you'll end up with like random out of left field ads that you normally won't get as an attempt to try to figure out like what this person is interested in and what we can sell them in. So it's less targeted ads, which I mean, it's a good thing. That means you're doing the right things and navigating your web searches privately. We're going to go ahead and talk about apps and extension. Just a second. So what you can use on your computer is called an extension. An extension is something that you can add onto your browser, like Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, any browser. And what Privacy Badger does is that it does its best to block advertisers and other third-party trackers from secretly trying to track you. So on top of the settings in your web browser, this also goes deeper. It's kept updated, and Privacy Badger is if you were to click on the link, it should give you the ability to and show you how to install it onto your specific browser. Privacy Badger is also the project of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And the Electronic Frontier Foundation is a digital privacy advocate that is interested in preserving your digital civil rights, as they mention in their copy in their about section. So they actively report on what's going on, usually at the congressional level, what's going on at the corporate level with Apple and Android. And they tend to delve deeply into topics of not only advertising and tracking, but also how your phone is used to geolocate you, and how that geolocation information, or where you are physically in the world, is sometimes sold to third parties. And those third parties can then sell it to a number of agencies for the sole purpose of, I'm not sure, and it makes me queasy thinking about it. So Electronic Frontier Foundation Frontier found the what I was talking about. This is Privacy Badger is a project of theirs. They keep it routinely updated. There is no cost. It is a nonprofit. Most likely, what it tries to do is collect some information to learn about the trackers used on various websites, and it does its best to anonymize the person who's using uh, Privacy Badger so that there's less identifying information. Hopefully, another thing that you might want to download, which is available on Android and iPhone, is the DuckDuckGo browser. It's pretty much like the search engine of DuckDuckGo on your device. On top of that, it also on the app itself will grade the website that you're on in terms of privacy. It will look for types of trackers that they're using. It will look for if they have like any privacy policies that they have on the website, and what information they're collecting from you, and give it a grade. Very similar to like F, or they have terrible privacy policies, to all the way to maybe A, which I haven't seen a website while using this app reach an A grade. Most websites fall under B or C. And really it's just a way for you to gauge like how what these websites are doing for the sake of consumer privacy. And again, you can download this onto your tablet, onto your iPhone, onto your Android phone, onto any device that runs Android or iOS. And they also have a feature where, say that you need to close out of the website because of X, Y, and Z. There is this little button that you press that will completely close out your session. It won't save anything onto the device, any cookies. I will say that from time to time, the biggest drawback between these two items is that it can break websites. And by break websites, I mean, sometimes you'll get an error message saying like, oh, you have a blocker on, please disable so that some of the functionality of this website can return. For instance, I know that I use my banking website, and if I was to have Privacy Badger working, or even sometimes DuckDuck, if I'm accessing it through DuckDuckGo browser on my mobile device, it will say something about functionality, like please enable third party, or please enable cookies for us to continue continue working. So if you ever find, whenever you're using any of these two or these two in conjunction, if you ever find that websites are not functioning as you'd like, try disabling one or both of these at the same time. And then at the end, you're more than welcome to clear out your cookies from your browser and do as you will. But sometimes it will break websites. And it's kind of funny because of how some websites are kind of dependent on these trackers, which helps fund them with some revenue, but it's also become integral for them for their websites to work, which is kind of interesting. We're basically at the end of the program, and again, just want to put this warning out again. We've discussed will help lessen what information is collected from websites. It won't completely stop them. Whenever there is movement to preserve consumer privacy, the other side will push back because that information is valuable for them to sell items, and even the act of selling information is such a big revenue stream. So whenever there's one push, there's going to be a harder push to find new and novel ways to track user behavior on their computer, on their mobile device, across websites. So what we're doing is making sure that there's more information being collected. And one of the new and novel ways that I kind of sort of brought up when someone asked about which is safer, Google or Safari, Google Chrome or Safari. Um, Safari has better protections against what's called fingerprinting. And so what happens is your computer has very specific dimensions. Like I am using a computer right now that I'm using to present the Zoom. This computer has a very specific version of Windows. This computer also has a very particular screen size. This computer also has numerous different fonts compared to other computers near me. Um, it also has a different version of Zoom or whatever program that I'm using. There's so much unique information on this computer that it basically becomes a fingerprint. And a lot of websites sometimes need that information in order to run the website, to be able to run the website appropriately or without fail. And so that is a new way to kind of identify who's where on what website. And the thing is, fingerprinting is a lot more difficult to deter because it's such an innocuous bits and pieces of information that once put together becomes sort of this massive fingerprint that can that that is able to differentiate your computer, your browsing habits from the browsing habits of others. So here's some resources that I want to let you know if you want to continue to learn more about this. Again, like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, they publish stories and about what's being done at the congressional level about privacy infringing technology or methods. Wired magazine is also great because it also keeps track, it keeps in cadence with new and emerging technologies, and it does delve deeply into privacy. So does PC Magazine, which talks about just technology and general, on top of covering privacy. And of course, these are the reference materials that I use for this website. Again, um, I'll also go ahead and um, I'll put this website up on the event calendar where you found the Zoom link through lylelibrary.org under upcoming events for this day for the program. I'll also go ahead and email it to the individuals that registered for the program. So with that said, are there any questions about what was discussed? Again, very dry material, a lot of very jargony, that's technology for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A section. We'll be more than happy to answer them. And again, what we're trying to do is trying to lessen the amount of information that is being collected from us. There's still going to be information collected because it's such a profitable industry collecting information and selling it that I mean it will adapt, it will find new ways. um it's kind of, I don't want to say scary, but it's just how it's just kind of interesting how ingenious companies can find that information with all these deterrents in the way. All right. Well, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sitting in this afternoon with us to talk about something incredibly dry, but important with regards to our online privacy. With that said, With that said, thank you so much. A recording of this program will be available online soon. I will also email once that program is to interested parties who've registered for the program. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Take care.